Welcome, everybody, back here at Veil of Sound for our regular Sunday interview. And this time, I'm talking to somebody who has something in common with Maxi Jazz from Faithless. Although he doesn't even know Maxi Jazz, I'm very sure. But both had a cameo in one of my all-time favorite movies. I'm very happy to have Al Johnson here on the show, but I don't want to talk about movies. I want to talk about his band, US Maple, and their first full-length record, Long Hair in Three Stages, which by now has seen its second reissue. And therefore, Al, we have to talk about it. And thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely.
So, when this one comes out, the reissue will be out exactly a month. It was released on June 13th, Friday the 13th, by the way. And it's very close to the 30-year anniversary of the record release, which was in October of 1995. Al, the first thing that we always ask here is, do you have any kind of band merch, shirt from your friends, from yourself, some kind of something that you want to pluck? And I will give you a moment while I, once in a while, like always, pluck something. I want to pluck another US band. We had them last week here on the show. Ranges, who this week have released their next full length record. If you haven't done it, please check it out. And Al, have you got anything that you would like to plug? Any band?
I have nothing in particular for on behalf of myself that I'd like to plug.
Ooh,
I
but
do like the name Ranges. That's a great name. I'll have to look into them.
especially for a
Um,
band from Bozeman, Montana.
oh, really?
They have a lot of range.
Even more incredible. But yeah, I mean, I'm not right now. I'm just I work as a case manager for a very large homeless shelter in the state of Iowa in Dubuque, and that keeps me fairly busy. So other than a lot of personal writing that I do, yeah, I'm not pursuing anything artistic right now.
Mhm. So then let me ask it this way. What was the last record that you either listened to or that you bought?
The last record that I listened to was Hex Induction Hour by the Fall, just because I'm a very big Fall fan. I'm trying to think of the last record that I bought because when I go see friends play or bands play, a lot of times I get handed a lot of things, so that doesn't really count. I guess probably the last record that I bought was I had lost the Big Black record, Songs About Fucking, and I wanted to own that. I wanted to have that. So I
As
had found,
everybody should.
and they should. And I was at a flea market of sorts, and there were record people there. So I found a copy and bought that. That was the last record that I bought. That was about 3 months ago.
So let's fly back to the year 1995. You had been in bands prior to US Maple. If I remember correctly, it was Shorty and Snail
Snail Boy.
Boy. And there was something on your Discogs which I couldn't verify, something called Mount Shasta, but I'm not sure
Okay.
about that.
All right. So the first the first real band that and by real I mean putting records out and stuff like that was a band called Snail Boy.
Yeah.
We had put a single out through No Blow Records. No Blow Records was run by John Moore, who was the singer guitar player from Tar. He was kind enough to put our first record out. And our second single, these are singles by the way, our second single, uh Lori Barbero from Babes in Toyland sent that to a gentleman named Long Gone John. Long Gone John ran a record label called Sympathy for the Record Industry out in California, and he put that out. Those were very big steps for me. Those were very, very big moments. I was very proud of that, and it encourages you to keep going.
Mm.
Mount Shasta. Mount Shasta was a band that John. It was a band by a gentleman named John Forbes. John Forbes was in a band called Dirt from Atlanta, and then he moved up to Chicago and started Mount Shasta. I was a guitar player only in Mount Shasta. Shorty, uh, Shorty was in between Snail Boy and Mount Shasta. That was with Mark Shippey from U.S. Maple,
Mm.
and we put that out on a record label called Gasoline Boost. I don't know if you remember Xmas Records. It was out of Germany. Armin from
Yes,
Xmas.
yes.
He
I
had
was just like X and then yeah, I remember. Yeah, I do have. Yeah,
so
I think he
they
also
were
put out something by Ecstasy. I'm not
yeah, I mean they were an active, relevant label out of
sure.
Germany, somewhere near Rolsheim, I think. Um, and they put out our first LP, which was called Thumb Days.
And then legend has it that you and the other members from US Maple met on a corner in the Windy City. And it's interesting because whichever history of US Maple I looked at, there was always a reference to you meeting on that specific corner. And I wondered whether that is a reflection, first of all, of the truth, and second, whether that already hints at a certain importance of the city of Chicago for US Maple.
Well, the city of Chicago, especially at the time, when I say time, I guess I'm talking around 95.
Yeah, the mid
There
90s.
were a lot of great things, a lot of great diverse things happening in Chicago. You had bands like the Sea and Cake, Tortoise,
Shellac.
um, Shellac. Um, uh, I mean, there were just so many different bands and different labels coming out of Chicago that it truly was a melting pot of talent. And so I was very fortunate to move there. I did move to Chicago for that reason. I did move to Chicago because it was a big city. I wanted to be in a big city. And I wanted to be a big city that had some sort of music relevancy to it. And
Mm.
yeah, so the guys in US Maple, Mark Shippey and I from Shorty and Snail Boy, we've always been paired up for a long, long time. And when I was thinking about starting another band after Shorty, I was sort of perusing through my mind people that I might want to work with. And Todd Rittman, who is the second guitar player or the low guitar player, he was somebody that I always thought was tremendously talented.
He
And
was in the
with
Mercury
Todd
Players,
was,
wasn't he?
yes, he was in the Mercury Players, and so was Pat Sampson. Pat Sampson was the drummer for the Mercury Players. Um, I wasn't the biggest fan of the Mercury Players, but I was a very big fan of those two guys and their style and their stage presence, and they just seemed to have a sort of something moldable for me, and that's really what I needed.
It's interesting because everybody who now listens carefully and who is not very familiar with US Maple, as you basically should be, you should be very familiar with that band if you listen to this channel because, we like stuff like that. Um, Everybody who listened carefully, you will have noticed there is no bass player in US Maple.
Right, there are not. So Todd Rittman, he has a custom guitar, and the first two strings on that guitar are bass strings. And when he plays live, he used to split out so that his guitar played the entire spectrum, the guitar spectrum and the bass spectrum. If he was to just pluck the bass strings, it would sound like a bass. If he was to play just the guitar strings, it would sound like a guitar. If he played all of those strings together, it would sound like a vacuum cleaner, which is what it did.
Yeah, but I'm also very sure that it intentionally sounded a little
Oh,
bit like a vacuum
absolutely.
cleaner.
Absolutely. I mean, he also installed half frets into the guitar on part of the neck. So he
Mhm.
did some personal modifications that definitely benefited the band. He did these modifications also had a very played a very big part in U.S. Maple's sound. Um, it's just a part of Todd being a brilliant person and an artist.
Yeah, and also somebody who at least knows a little bit about, how to construct and reconstruct a
Right,
guitar.
absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely.
by the way, if anybody thinks about this being a very unusual way, Talia Sadek from Come, and now she's playing in E. She does the same thing with her guitar. So if you
Really?
wanna, yeah, she does. Uh,
Okay.
if anybody wants to find out about that, we had an interview with Talia more or less a year ago, and I
Okay,
will
cool.
put the link underneath this. Talia is doing the same in that band.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
so before you came together, but we haven't talked about the sound, the sound of US Maple, and that's what I was hinting at. Chicago definitely was a huge hub for music at the time. Um, but the question is, do you think that there is something sound-wise Chicago-esque in US Maple?
Well, let me say this, and I've mentioned this before, so I hope people don't find it tiresome, but I'm a firm believer in the geographic location of Chicago. The winters are brutal.
The
Okay.
summers are very
The
hot.
summers are brutal. So you have you know you're constantly fighting your way through the streets to get to your job, to get to band practice, to get to see your kids. I mean, it's a real struggle, and I think that struggle is inherent and built into the platform of the sound of U.S. Maple and a lot of the bands. I mean, there's a reason why Big Black has that aggressive, edgy, industrial touch to it. It's because Chicago has those parameters. You know what I mean?
Yep. And there is
And
another
it's
thing that I would add to those parameters, and that is Chicago being one of the few American big cities in America that has no underground but overground.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I was interrupting you. You wanted to say something.
No, no,
Sorry.
no, no. I was just blabbing.
No, 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 no. Don't say that, please. But yeah, I can see that. The location of Chicago is very, very different. It's somewhere in the middle, and it's at the same time it's not. And I still remember I was in Chicago twice, once in the summer of '94 and once in '96. And I still remember that Chicago was a very, very, for me back then, strange city. On the one hand, you have this huge lake, and at the other hand, you have a city which, well, at least back in the day, the way that I observed it with my young age back then, it didn't feel as if Chicago was really embracing it. But
Yeah.
let's get back to the history of US Maple. So you come together, you form a band in Chicago, the sound is influenced by the band, and then you go and record a 7-inch plus a cover, and a short time later you release this record which now stands on the shrine of American noise rock bands. First of all, the cover. Did you really like AC/DC back in the day?
Okay. I am a very big AC/DC fan.
Okay.
So are you talking about the cover of Long Hair in Three Stages?
I'm talking about what is it? Sin
Oh, you're
City
talking
that
about
you cover.
you're talking about the cover song. Okay.
Hmm.
So here's the deal on that. I am a very big fan of AC/DC. I am not a big fan of the song that US Maple did. If I could do that all over again, I would do the song that I wanted to do at the time, which is If You Want Blood, You Got It. Um, I think we were late coming to the table to come up with a song, and I remember feeling a little rushed just trying to get it done.
Hmm.
And that's unfortunate, but that's the truth.
Hmm.
There are a lot of other bands, uh, and in particular, I love Jim O'Rourke's version of his two songs, which I believe, if I recall talking to him, it's two AC/DC records being played at the same time, right? And
I think it
they're
is, yes.
something like that. It's like a cyclical, repetitive thing where the riff is being recreated over and over again, and it's chopped up, very choppy. A very creative thing to do, right?
Yeah.
You can either cover the song verbatim, and that's that, or you can do something interesting with it. We should have had done something more interesting than we did. Not something I'm very proud of.
But let me put it this way. I'm very sure that by doing this, I mean, like the first thing you ever released was on a compilation together with Shellac. Come on, that must have been in some way a little bit of a boost, wasn't it?
No, no, absolutely. And Steve was a good friend of mine, and anytime you can piggyback onto something like that, I mean, it's nothing less than a miracle. So that was fantastic for us. And I believe my brother's band was also on that. My brother is in a band called Biggin.
Yeah.
And so who was on that first single? It was U.S. Maple, Shellac,
So
Biggin.
so in chronological order of the two sides, it's Shellac doing Jailbreak,
Yes.
Biggin doing TNT, Brice Glass doing Angus Day aus Licht, and
Yeah.
then you with Sin City.
Okay, so it is that Brice Galash. That's Jim O'Rourke.
Yeah.
That's his project. That's a very creative, very cool idea.
Yeah.
So I remember now.
And a few weeks later, you release the 7-inch, and then in October 24, you release Long Hair in 3 Stages.
Yes.
Were you aware of at the time that you had something really good on your hands?
I wasn't necessarily sitting in that chair feeling that way, but do you know who was? It was Jim O'Rourke. And
who for anybody who doesn't know, he did a lot of stuff with Wilco. He was in Sonic Youth. So Jim O'Rourke knows his stuff.
He does. And, we, being U.S. Maple, we were the first band, the first rock band that he had recorded. Jim was recording all of his stuff and a lot of the Gaster del Sol stuff and all of that at his home. He had like a little home recording studio. But I think that we were the first, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure we were the first people to go get Jim, hire Jim, bring him to a studio and have him do this first official production, as a producer. And, he was so excited about this record and about what was happening. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, is Jim just excited because he's doing it? This is his first time and I'm riding along with that and I'm happy for him. Or is something special happening? So I really didn't know, but all I know was that I was very much aware that Jim was very overwhelmed by it. So that was a good feeling.
Yeah. To be honest, I only discovered US Maple roughly 10 years later. Okay. But I still remember back in the summer of 2005, I still remember sitting down listening to it. I was in a very noise rock period of my life and discovering a lot of stuff that had been there before. And I remember sitting down listening to Long Hair in 3 Stages, and it was, I don't want to say it was overwhelming because I only have that feeling very, very seldom, but it was very, very close. And I immediately knew why so many of my friends were speaking about this record in the highest of praises. Because I don't know how you did it, and I have to ask that in a moment, but there is something very gripping about the record. It pulls you in immediately, but it never tries to outsmart you, although it's very, very smart music. First of all, and that is an important thing for me, the track listing. How long did it take for you to find the right order of the songs?
I have to tell you, that is something that is very particular to me, very important to me. It's the same with putting together a live set. I mean, I will I will sweat over the order of things for an inordinate amount of time. And it's even more important on a record, I think, of course, because it's there forever. So
And it's your
Um,
debut. Come on.
Absolutely. So yes, that was something that I know I spent a lot of time considering.
Hmm. And you start with Hey King. The record starts straight in. There is not much of a build up. It's like, boom, here we are, and that's us. Um, how did it come to be Hey King as the first track? Because there are so many awesome tracks on the record, but why Hey King?
I think, and I'm not sure if even feel this way right now, but I know at the time in my mind, it seemed a bit more anthemic than the other
Hmm.
songs. It
Hmm.
seemed more of an anthem, and anthems should be at the beginning,
Hmm.
in my mind, right?
Hmm.
Um, that's why you hear the anthem, and at the beginning of soccer and football games. It's the kickoff. It lays a base and it lays an emotional base for what may come after it. It
I
seemed more
love.
like an anthem to me. That's all.
Mhm. By the way, I love the order in which you give those two sports. Um, and then we've already talked about, one of your two guitar players using a guitar slightly different than a lot of other people. But there is something in the guitar sound that is very interesting because a lot of noise rock bands have those very straight, edgy kind of, for lack of a better word, guitar elements.
Right.
US Maple has edgy stuff, but they're not straight. It, to me, always sounds as if there is always a little twist and a little tweak on a lot of those moments. Do you have any idea how Todd and Mark, no, Todd and no, Todd and Mark came up with those two
Well,
with
what
those sounds? Sorry.
you're right. So, I mean, I can't really describe or enlighten anybody on how their development began. But to me, there exists a sort of a zero spectrum, and you have to fill this spectrum. These guys appropriately fill that spectrum based on the way that they play. So there's a lot of low end and a lot of aggression and a lot of muted tones with Todd, which with that comes a lot of power. And with Mark, it's more of like the figure skater on top,
Hmm.
the person who isn't going to go so hard, so fast all the time, more like insects in the woods, they fill a spectrum and they do it very, very well. And each person, each guitar player, is doing something very, very special and very opposite almost. So it fills a spectrum. It becomes one big glorious thing, I mean,
It
it's
would.
like magic to me, really.
I think it probably is because it's hard to describe it.
Yeah, right.
First, I have two questions concerning that. So first, would you agree that there is no rhythm and no lead guitar in US Maple?
Yes, I would agree that. There are not assigned roles like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
It happens. Rhythm happens. Lead happens. It's just it's just not assigned to anybody in particular. And especially live, when we play live, the interpretation of these songs, the way we play them live, it's not like they are on the record. I mean, it could turn into a complete disaster and go wayward and spin out and crash and burn, which we've done many, many, many times, as those who have seen us can attest to. Um, yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that.
And the second thing is, would you agree that there is always that little twist and turn on the sounds? I'll give you an example. There are moments on the record. when I have a feeling as if I'm listening to a band that very intentionally tries to stand outside any kind of American music tradition.
Right. So we all grew up during the late 70s American classic rock um, era. And those are the bands that had very, very, very big effect on me as a kid. The what I wanted to extract from that era was elements from it, rock and roll elements. They might even be visual. There may be some power chords in there.
Mm-hmm.
There may be uh, there may be something even that could even be called a solo. There are elements of classic rock
Yeah.
songs that are repeated over and over and over again. It's a recipe, right?
Mm-hmm.
We tried to keep a very loose recipe that is based around classic rock, but fill it with things that were had absolutely nothing to do with that. I don't know if it comes across that way or not.
It's totally fine because then again, there are moments on the record when one can hear those classic American song structures. There are moments when I had a feeling like, okay, this could be some kind of Southern rock Altman
Yeah,
homage.
right, right,
There are moments when, it sounds like swamp rock, something like
right.
that. So, but it never lasts long.
Exactly.
That is also one of the reasons why many of the songs are very, very short. The longest one is 4 minutes and 40, and the shortest is
Right.
155. Um, there is a statement on a lot of the pages that I've looked up, and there is something that struck me, and I hope I get it correctly. Somewhere it says that you are looking for a formula or a device for reorganizing rock and roll. Um, yeah, you go on.
That no, that's exactly it. So you have the elements of rock and roll in the predictable way that we all have experienced that
Yeah.
through classic rock bands, and that goes all the way up to indie rock bands.
Mhm.
And we would pull from these commonalities, but we would put them in what I would say are the wrong places or different places.
Mhm.
So it's almost like it's very good patchwork of elements of pulling from elements of classic rock
Mhm.
and then welding them together.
Would you say that for me, there's a lot of classic stuff, classic rock stuff that I don't like. I have to admit that, but
Absolutely.
there are some great ones. But something that for me always signified classic rock was a certain kind of predictability. That is something that you don't hear in US Maple, right? That is something that you intentionally try to stay away from, being predictable.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, in this industry, in this world, in art, predictability is death, right? So,
Depends on how you define it. If you confirm to predictability, you can turn into Taylor Swift.
sure, absolutely. And then that is what that is.
Exactly.
It's just for us, I want to say, we were almost more like, and this is going to sound a bit abstract, but I always saw the band as more like magicians almost than musicians. Um, in that we were we were trying to almost fool the audience with our songs and some of the elements in the songs.
Very interesting that you said that you use the word fool in there.
I always wanted to appeal to the lowest common denominator in the room. The guy in the back of the bar who's half drunk, who's there every night, whether there are bands there or not,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
who's wearing a hockey jacket, um, with bleach blonde hair and bleach jeans and dirty tennis shoes. I always wanted to be able to at least on some level appeal to him, give him enough rock to where it would entertain him, it would fill him, it would thrill him. But
But
he doesn't have to get the whole thing and walk away and write a review on it or fully understand it. It just has to appeal to him almost biologically. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, I do. I'm just thinking whether at the same time, while you are trying to grab him by the wrist and show him, okay, this is rock and roll, at the same time, you're making it hard for him to really get into it. You know, it's not Into the Groove by Madonna. It's let's put it like
Absolutely.
that. Um, but that is basically the two-sided face of US Maple. On the one hand, you grab us by the wrist, you catch our attention, but and then comes the band part, you do not play along with the rules. Very interesting approach to music.
And
Yeah,
what that does is that keeps alive this sort of element of surprise and immediacy
and danger.
uh, and danger. Exactly. And like I mentioned before, tying in with this concept of danger, we would play shows, and I know that everybody in the band felt this way. We did not know if we were going to make it through that show or those songs. They would come out a little differently every night. Strings would be broken. Strings songs would go off in slightly different directions based on internal and external events. So it was always very loose. It was a loose concept for us, even as performers. I hope that
Yes,
makes sense.
it does. It definitely does. It's just a very interesting thing, and you know, I also have to 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 think about where I can, and that's also something that is very interesting with US Maple. It's very hard to grasp it, to talk about it.
And you know what?
Uh,
Not to stop you there, but
no, no,
I completely understand how people do not get into U.S. Maple, do not like the music, can't get a hold of it, hate my voice, um, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not offended by that at all. My feelings aren't hurt at all about that. I know that. That's just built into what we're doing, and it's just something I have to accept, and I've accepted that the entire time. We all did.
yes, I can see that. I
It, it's
mean,
almost like it's almost like I'm forgiving you. I forgive you for
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 not getting US Maple.
yes, exactly. I forgive you.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that. Um, to come back to the recording. I mean, you recorded at a time when there was a sexual molester, but still a good politician in the White House.
Yes.
Different to today. Um, how do you remember the time? Did 1995 have particular influences on US
Well,
Maple?
I had to think about that. Honestly, I remember that there were a lot of active, interesting bands happening in Chicago. It was important to me to try and be a part of something that stood out on its own, even if it wasn't appreciated, even if it wasn't good, even if it wasn't embraced. I just wanted to stand out and be apart from everybody. I wanted us to have our own ugly personality, um, and I just wanted to. I wanted to have an opportunity to have my dance, for us to have our chance to get up and dance with the others.
Yes, you definitely get that, and you definitely deserve that. What always is fascinating when people talk about the 90s, a lot of them see the 90s like a strange version of the 80s, which we both know it wasn't.
Which is weird. I am a huge, huge fan of the '80s. I think it was a great time to be alive
Yeah,
for music. And the '90s. you almost have to go searching for a subset of indie music to find interesting things. I was never really pulled into the grunge movement, so to speak. I guess there are elements about it that I appreciated. Um, and there were some great bands. There was a few great bands that came out of that, but it wasn't. It's almost like it wasn't offensive enough for
Yeah,
me
no,
personally. For me personally,
yeah, I get that. I think if you were looking for that, then the only scene that was really appealing was the black metal scene in the time, like burning
right,
churches and stuff like that. But
right,
again, of
right,
course, the music is it's intentionally disgusting, which would, of course, not be anything that I guess would appeal to you. Coming back to that time, I remember the 90s as a strange time, but there was something that I don't know if you share that, but there was some kind of optimism floating around.
right. I understand what you're saying, and I do remember that feeling. I think a lot of that optimism came from the fact that bands started believing that they could make money and succeed and do
Yeah.
well. And I think that having those kinds of thoughts is A, dangerous,
Mhm.
and B, suspicious. So that was just not that having those kinds of thoughts was could never be a part of what US Maple was about. We were
Yep.
too outside of any of that. Hoping for radio play, hoping for bigger tours. And there was a point in our career when we were opening for Pavement across the
Mhm.
United States, and that really opened my eyes to what at the time was sort of technology and the internet and all of these things could do for you in terms of boosting your name and your persona and garnering you an audience, a huge audience.
Yeah, and at the same time, also turning you into a hostage of the audience. We also have
Yeah,
to.
absolutely. I used to bring a bayonet out on stage because I felt I was going to war every night opening for Pavement. I remember uh, I remember having so much stuff thrown at me. The entire contents of a drink in order. First the tonic, then the ice, then the gin, then the cup, then the lime.
And the
Um,
glass.
yeah, and so you, and I expected that, and I think Pavement really liked that we were. And kudos to Pavement for having us open for them. They could have had anybody,
Mhm.
and they were just really, really, really great to us and interesting, really good people.
Yeah, and I think that, for example, Malcolm was much more open to a lot of different music. Oh.
Right. And I was never a Pavement fan. I just for whatever reason they never pulled me into what they were doing. That could be my fault. I don't know, but faults aside, it just I was never attracted to it. But certainly I understood how that machine worked and how it worked for a lot of bigger audiences in
Yeah.
that demographic.
Yeah, but it's interesting that still a lot of people nowadays put your band and especially your debut onto a similar level, with,
Huh,
for example, Slanted and Enchanted, um, and Crooked Rain, or also with a lot of the shellac stuff, because, and here we come back to the record, there was something about the 90s that, in retrospect, I also find very interesting. People were open, at least I think, were a little bit more open for quirkiness in music. And
yeah,
with
I think
quirkiness, you go ahead, please, first.
no. I was just gonna say I agree. Um, I think a lot of smaller labels and a lot of smaller artists had their day in the sun, so to speak, because because of that, because people were open to that, because people were searching for that. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that that helps us out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
definitely. Um, there are a few more questions that I have about the record
sure.
before we come to the ending of the interview, which will be a quick fire round. First off is, did CC Top ever get your letter?
ZZ Top never received our letter. I'm curious to know whether ZZ Top have received my prayers. In my mind, in my mind, ZZ Top got so bad so fast. I know at one point in my life I was praying for them to get a little bit better, to be a little bit more classier, I suppose.
Yeah, that is also something that a lot here in Europe, especially in Germany, a lot of people don't understand. There was a time when CZ Top was a top-notch rock band.
Oh, we're like Tres Hombres, Tejas. I mean, incredible records,
Exactly.
incredible records.
Yeah.
I agree.
But most people over here only know "Give Me All Your Lovin',"
Yeah,
and
right.
that's already one of those points where you have to say, okay.
What a garbage period of music that was too, you know?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
My God, it's embarrassing.
And the other thing is when we look at the record cover, we see a Spanish matador. Um, who came up with the idea of cladding that record into that? I mean, like the
Okay,
record clearly is a 20th century record, end of 20th
okay.
century, 1990s.
So
And then you have
I'm gonna
something like a matador.
sorry. So I'm gonna tell you about the record, and I don't think I know I haven't mentioned this to anybody ever. There was a label called Table of the Elements,
Mhm.
and Jeff Hunt ran a record label called Table of the Elements here in the States. He did a lot of records. He did records for Faust. He did uh, a lot of minimalist, very cool design ideas that I loved. He did Tony Conrad's artwork. He did a lot of metallic colors, very minimalist metallic colors. That's what I wanted, right?
Mhm.
That's what I went into this, and that's why I asked Mark Fisher from Skin Graft to get a hold of Jeff and to come up with a design for the record. It seemed to be taking quite a while for Jeff to come up with an idea. And in my mind, I'm thinking, why don't you just put together one of these cool minimalist metallic records that you've been putting out? Just go to your portfolio and pull out a nice, cool, simple, minimalist design. That's what I wanted because I didn't want really the artwork to hint at anything about the music, anything about the artist. I wanted it to be completely open for interpretation. Well, he was taking a lot of time, and I think that he rushed it and came up with something because he had a deadline to meet. And I have never, ever been happy with the way that that record has looked ever. When I talked to him about it, he said all of the letters, all of the words inside of the bull on that record are from dead languages. Okay.
Yeah.
I do think that that's cool. I appreciate that element of it. I just don't like the way it looks
Mhm. I'm just looking at it,
graphically.
and I'm just looking at it right
Graphic,
now. And, yeah.
graphically, I don't like it. It's too. It clutters. It doesn't speak anything, but at the same time, it's very derivative. You know, a bull and a matador. I mean, I it's I've never been happy with the artwork of that. The albums that we had done, any album that U.S. Maple did after Long Hair Three Stages,
Mhm.
far and above, I treasure the artwork.
Uh, then I
Not
ha-
this album.
then I have to ask, isn't there? Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't there a reissue which is basically just gray steelish and it's much more minimalist? Are you more
Yeah,
happy with that one?
of the new one.
I think there is this. Let me look it up. I don't know if it's a new reissue or the one from 2013.
What
Bu-
I do know is Mark Fisher worked with the artwork on this new reissue, and I like
It
it
is.
a lot. I like it a
It's.
lot better. There's more space. Mark is a great designer. Mark is a fantastic artist, Mark Fisher. So I'm happy to work with Mark in any way. I trust Mark with my child. So um, I do
Uh,
believe it looks better, and I am happier with it. I suppose I was not very happy with the artwork initially.
so what I just looked it up, and there is this 2013 issue where there is one edition, which is basically, and I hope I quote it correctly, it's an aluminium sleeve.
Okay, it's an aluminum sleeve.
Yes,
Those aluminum sleeves, I love that. Okay,
that's what I was thinking of.
so Mark Fisher's dad owned a company in St. Louis called Fisher Sheet Metal, huge sheet metal plant. We went down to St. Louis and we made those ourselves on big metal bending machines, and we hand buffed them with hand buffers, and we made them all by hand, and it was very special and very cool. I love the metal element to the record. I guess what I'm speaking about is the actual artwork that is on the CD cover.
Yeah, I know. And
Yeah,
there is
right,
also a new version of that on the new reissue. Yes,
right,
it seems more defined. Let's put it like
right,
that.
right.
Yeah. Um, and then the last thing that I would like to know, and you've already hinted at it, you've spoken about your connection with Skin Graft. You left Skin Graft for a couple of years. And
Yes,
you recorded a record, and I would like to hear about your experience with that. You recorded a record with Michael Gira from Swan.
yes,
It was Talker, your first full length album.
right.
How do I have to imagine that process? You working with Gira.
Okay, so
Was it
Michael,
as horrible as I imagined it to be?
I'm not sure if horrible is the right word. Let's just say it was tedious. But
Yes.
to Michael's credit, Michael is a perfectionist. Michael can be abrasive. Michael wants specific ideas executed, and
At
I
that
love
moment.
that. Yes, and I love that about him. I love that
Yeah.
about his personality. Um, and that was a very, very good experience. We recorded that in Brooklyn, New York, at BC Studios. Martin BC owned the studio there, and I remember that recording. I remember a lot of it was Michael screaming and yelling at Martin BC because Martin was more or less the engineer, and Michael Gira was indeed a producer on this. He had ideas that sort of transcended a knob twiddle or a fader being pushed up and down. There were ideas and sounds that he was trying to capture, and it seemed to me that he was making this project to him as important as it was to us. And you can't ask for a better experience.
That is true. That is true. But yeah, I had just had a moment with Gira a couple of weeks ago when I saw him perform with Christopher Hahn at Roadburn.
You know what? I
And
was at Roadburn, and I missed that show because I'm 58 years old and I'm not going to pack myself into a box of 3,000 sardines. But I was trying to hook up with Michael. I called his booking agent over there, and his booking agent at some point was very happy to talk to me, knew who I was, knew US Maple, was going to put me into contact with Michael because it's been years since I've talked to him, and I was very excited to see him and to speak with him. And then the asshole ghosted me. And when I tried to get a hold of him, he sent out a broadcast email that said, "Don't even try calling me. I've lost my phone. Um, I cannot be reached." And I never heard back from him. Ridiculous, right? You're somebody's agent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're somebody's agent and not somebody's boss. Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean.
So
But what I wanted to say, I saw Gira there, and poor Christopher Hahn was insulted on stage, and I thought that guy must be a living saint for all his patience. But I know what you mean. I know what you mean. From an artist point of view, Gira, and I've heard that from other people as well. From an artist point of view, Gira is simply, and for lack of a better word, an utter genius, right? So,
absolutely. And there's a reason why he's still around.
yeah.
And there's a
And
reason
why
why
he's still relevant.
he's still around. He's still relevant. He still is making great music. I love the Angels of Light stuff personally.
Mhm.
Um, Michael Gira and an acoustic guitar alone in a cafe, it would be something that I would always appreciate.
Yeah.
So there's rooted talent within that man.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like, the new record came out a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, like, he has said that this is the last regular Swans record, and it's one of the saddest things this year, I think. Um, so Al, thanks for first of all for all the insight into that time, into the recording of Long Hair and Free Stages, and into everything that went with it. But you, as everybody, will have to go through the infamous quickfire round here at the end. You will always get two alternatives, like New York style pizza versus deep dish pizza,
Okay.
or Coca-Cola versus Pepsi.
Okay.
And usually, I always give a third notion. I always say AC versus DC. This time I'll do it differently. I'll give you the two versions of AC/DC. Which one do you like more? With Brian
Okay.
Johnson or Bon Scott? You have to choose
Bon
one of them.
Scott. Bon Scott.
Mhm. Uh,
Absolutely.
we've talked about pavement. Which pavement record do you like more? Crooked Rain, or Slanted Enchanted?
I think Crooked Rain.
Mhm. For me, it would be this. So you lived in Chicago for some time, so I'll give you the White Sox versus the Cubs.
Oh, absolutely. The Cubs. Northsiders.
Okay. Um, Tortoise. Which record would you rather listen to right now? Millions Now Living, or TNT?
TNT.
You, as an AC/DC song
Yes.
fan, have to choose that, right? Um, I hope you know both bands because they're both noise rock bands, and
Right.
even though I'm not sure whether you would categorize US Maple Leaf as noise rock, but I'll give you Oxbow versus Cherubs.
Whoa. That's a tough one.
Not for me, but I'll give you my answer
Um,
after yours.
I grew up in Shorty playing with the Cherubs, and they're, uh, but Oxbow. Wow. I'm gonna take a pass.
For me, it's very easy. I'm biased. I would have to choose my friend Eugene.
I mean, is Eugene is in the present. He is special in the present. Okay. He's talented. He's confident. He is a front man.
Yeah,
Um,
through and through.
to me, the Cherubs, this is a reunion thing now that's going on with the Cherubs. So I only have a recollection of the Cherubs when they were first relevant in the
Mhm.
early mid '90s. So um, yeah, if I have to state sort of if I'm going to give you an answer on relevancy, I'm always going to say Oxbow, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah.
And Eugene is such a sweetheart, and he's such a relevant current talent that I have high hopes that he is going to actualize whatever he wants. Also, I'm not sure if I should even be mentioning this, but I think I may be singing on one of their songs.
You
I
mean
don't know
on
which.
Buñuel?
I don't know. I'm breaking it here right now. I don't know which song.
But do you
And
mean Buñuel or do you mean Cherubs?
yeah, so I met them for the first time in person, Eugene at Roadburn, and their guitar player was in other bands that I played with in U.S. Maple early on in Italy.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited for that opportunity because I think they've really got something. You know how
Yeah.
you can look at a band and you don't have to know very much about them, but you can observe that they have A, potential, and B, star power. That's what I
Yeah.
see. That's what I see in Bunel. That's what I see in Eugene.
Yeah. I'll give you two bands that were around at a similar time as yours. June of 44 versus Arab on Radar.
Wow. Um,
Very different bands. I know. I know.
yeah, very, very different bands. All of those people are very good people.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to say June of 44.
Mhm.
And the reason is because I think June of 44 had sort of stepped away from a lot of the noise rock and a lot of the more rougher sounding bands at the time, and they had that sort of Louisville slang going on. And it seemed to me to be a little bit more original. That's all, just a little bit. I mean,
Mhm.
I've seen Arab on Radar live, and yes, they have stunned me. They were very, very good live. But I've seen a lot of bands that based a lot of their performance on energy. Juno 44 doesn't have to rely on just energy. They can work on they can present their material, and I think that there's just a little bit more to them.
Mhm.
You probably didn't expect that answer, did you?
Um, with most of these questions, I do not necessarily expect one. With the Tortoise one, I was expecting you to choose GT. Um, I'll give you one of my favorite all-time bands, Sonic Youth, because of the Jim O'Rourke connection.
Absolutely.
And I'll contrast them with their opponent, the Glenn Branca Ensemble.
Okay. I am a very big fan of Sonic Youth when they started to, I'm going to say, coalesce. Daydream Nation, one
Mhm.
of my favorite records of
Yeah,
all time,
mine too.
probably.
Yeah, an island
And I
record for me.
and I've seen, yeah, Desert Island record, and I've seen them play during that tour,
Mhm.
and very special people, very cool people, very important band
Yeah,
that had gone through some different stages where their sounds were almost opposing. If you go from Evol to Daydream Nations, you have two totally different entities there, and I
yeah, and then
appreciate.
and then you go to the experimentalism phase in the mid '90s, which is again
True,
very different. Yeah.
true. So, like I said, I've been such a big fan of Daydream Nation. It would be that for sure.
Mhm. Fun fact: if you ever go to Cologne, visit the cathedral because
I
one
have
of one of the windows was done by the same guy who did the cover for Daydream Nation.
really. I talk about the Cologne Cathedral to just about everybody that will listen. The
Which is
last time I
correct. It's
was
the most beautiful church in the world. I'm not biased. I'm just from
no,
Cologne.
no, it is.
It
And
is.
if you walk through the Cologne Dome, you see all of these older tombs, these kings' tombs.
Yes.
And I was particularly taken by one king, I can't remember his name, but he must have had dogs or puppies in his life that he loved
Yes.
because there are
They
dogs
are
in
there
the
on. Yes.
statue nuzzling under his legs as if
Yes.
to wake him up.
Yes.
That image and me standing there and looking at that, I've remembered for 30 years. And it's
Yeah.
it's 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 very beautiful, very important.
I'll give you. I have three more.
Okay.
Um, one of my all-time favorite bands, and I'm very, very happy that I saw them on tour back in the 90s. Fugazi
Ah,
versus Minor Threat.
okay. Then for me, that would be Fugazi.
For me too.
Um, Fugazi, In on the Kill Taker, probably my favorite record, but there are, Ian MacKaye and Guy and these guys, they're so prolific that I felt like that this is a band that could probably play forever and again give people beautiful things over and over again. Um, to me, Fugazi seems a little bit more tapped into, and a lot of people are going to argue this, but I'm more tapped into the emotions that Fugazi puts out there than Minor Threat. Minor Threat is it's more sort of that DC hardcore thing.
Totally.
Fugazi is something that they invented. Fugazi, the sound of Fugazi is to me it's omnipotent. I
And
don't know
it's
if you
time and placeless.
absolutely they're an incredible band. They're an incredible band.
The last two couples are always Chicago related. So I'll start with two Chicago punk bands that were important in the 90s and late 90s, early zeros. The Alkaline Trio versus Naked Raygun.
Okay. Um, I'm going to have to say Naked Raygun, just because they were more of an important band to me when I was
Mhm.
growing up.
Yeah.
Um, the Alkaline Trio, I don't know a lot about them. I know that they have a song in which they sing about me,
Yes,
uh,
that's why I
and
chose
I
it.
and I appreciate that. But I never really pursued the Alkaline Trio except to know that they were around for a period of time.
They
Naked
still are.
Raygun
Yeah.
Naked Raygun was essentially Chicago's earthquake band.
Yeah.
I mean, who writes an anthem like Peacemaker? Only Naked Raygun, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or Managua or I mean, so much of what Naked Raygun were about. That was a catalyst for me. They were
Yeah. And
they were a catalytic band for me.
yeah, and one has to say, of course, that there would not be an Alkaline Trio without Naked Raygun.
Right, right. And
Uh,
there might not even be a Big Black without Naked Raygun. Um, they
yeah.
coexisted at the time,
Yeah.
but I know that at the pulse beat of Chicago, Naked Raygun would be that heart for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those coexisting band, I'm not going to say rivalries, but competitions, which simply where both bands benefited from the other because, they were like, okay, they are doing this, then we have to be even better.
Right, right.
And it's interesting that you say Big Black because I'll give you two of Steve's bands. So I'll give
Okay.
you Big Black versus Shellac.
Well, for me, I think that Big Black were a more important band
Mhm.
than Shellac.
Yeah.
Shellac was Steve's working class band.
Yeah.
Um, they were three honest guys from honest bands writing great music, and there's lots of shellac songs I like. But I have seen Big Black, and I'm telling you, that's trying to grab a lizard by the tail is seeing them live. Um,
Imagine.
and I remember the bass player Dave. He had come up to this very small college town that I was living in, DeKalb, Illinois, and decided to just stay. Big Black played that night. He stayed in and continued to live with us for about a month after that. I mean, which goes to show, I mean, just how real and how loose the personalities were in that
Yeah,
band. You know what I mean?
yeah. Would it have been more difficult if I had given you Rape Man versus Big Black?
Yes, it would. That would have been more difficult.
I'm not going to make you choose between those two, but I thought, okay, Shellac versus Big Black, that's going to be easy because I was very sure that you would have said, oh, Rape Man or something. That's difficult. Alan, thanks for all your time. Thanks for the insight. Thanks for the wonderful record and music that you gave us, and especially Long Hair and Free Stages. Remember, folks, this was reissued a month ago. If you have not got a copy, now is your time to do so. First time on, as Mark told me, colored vinyl. I have to mention that. And yeah, if you don't have a copy, grab it, listen to it, and maybe afterwards you will feel like I did 20 years ago when discovering this, for lack of a better word, American rock shrine band, at least for me. Al, thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, my
Hey,
friend.
thank you very much. I appreciate it. It was lovely meeting you.
Thank you very much.